Welcome to Design Louder, Episode 1. Today I talk with Ben, who's a brilliant motion and 3D designer, and of course, the mastermind behind the knob keyboard. Whoa, hold on. Oh man, I just got a new project on Contra. Sorry about that. Here's my conversation with Ben. I mean, starting with the first question, why did you decide to design and actually build a keyboard?
So it kind of came about just flow of work. I'm not an industrial designer by any means, but I have, I like beautiful technology, and I kind of was challenging myself to model like these little devices that might never exist. So I was thinking during the process, like, what would happen if I designed a keyboard? And I started I think the tweet I put out was like, how hard can it be? And it was like a keycaps, the original keycap design that I'd made. And that was in July of last year, 2023. So Here we are less than a year later, and pre-orders are open. It's going great. Excited
That's
about
crazy.
it.
That's awesome. So, I mean, that's perfect. Next question is this your first physical product ever then?
Yes, it is.
That's crazy.
And definitely not my last. I'll say that.
That's great. Great to hear. I mean, the keyboard, so give some background. Like was already a Work Louder fan as it is. I got the creator board right in front of me right now.
Nice.
And so, I mean, obviously that bias was already there that I just love everything they make. And so when I saw yours, man, I was just captivated with it. So how did you get connected with Work Louder to build this keyboard?
So it kind of happened organically. Kind of like this whole process has been very organic. I haven't tried to force it too much. I mean, if it happened, it happened. But I was working to make the keyboard come to life on my own. Like I had reached out to some industrial designers on LinkedIn, and we did a few Zoom calls. So what do I have to do to make this? And then I helped me learn a bunch of lingo in the space that I hadn't heard before. Things like a bill of materials, having contract manufacturers, things like that, where you work with a contract manufacturer to develop a prototype, and then they will help you get it built and they get a cut of whatever.
Right.
And that's typically how you make small batch hardware, is by working with a contract manufacturer. So I was fully prepared to do that. I was going to do a Kickstarter and all of that to get it funded, because I couldn't have funded it myself otherwise. It just so happened I was in a Slack group with the Work Louder founder, Mike, and he DM'd me saying what do you think about a partnership? And the interesting thing about it is they didn't want it just to be a collaboration. They wanted it to be a partnership where I was working directly with, his co-founder, Mattia, who's an industrial designer. And he has a ton of experience, working with manufacturers and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just handling the design of the keyboard, the marketing of the keyboard, all of that kind of stuff. And they handle the stuff that's behind the scenes. So it's very much a partnership, because we're both putting a lot of our effort and time into the keyboard project, and it makes it a beneficial thing for both of us.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So, I mean, when he reached out, so were you already promoting the 3D models of the keyboard and whatnot at that time? Is that kind of how he saw it?
Yeah. And, he saw that it was getting tons of eyeballs. And there was a lot of similarities to the keyboard that they had announced earlier in the year. I believe it was early 2023, the Nomad, which they did a very successful Kickstarter campaign. That board's going to be coming out really soon. It's been awesome to see them build the prototypes on Twitter and Instagram yesterday, actually. So it was cool to see all those parts coming together. But there's a lot of similarities with the technology behind them. While they're aesthetically very different, the underlying technology is nearly identical. So it made sense to partner with me, because it was serving a certain aesthetic that their product line doesn't right now.
Right.
And it's just been really great.
That's awesome. I think the problem for me is going to be I'm going to have all these work louder keyboards, and how do I know which one to use every day? Especially when they all get released later this year and everything.
Make a little app where you just hit a button and it like chooses
Which
the
keyboard do I
keyboard
get
for you,
today?
and then you just plug it in.
So, I mean, so this is your first physical product. Obviously, you're already a 3D and motion designer before this. So, I mean, that naturally probably helped quite a lot with designing the actual keyboard and getting inspired to turn it into real life. What are some of the challenges you encountered while designing the board? Maybe anything specific that's different from what you would normally do in 3D design, where this is actually going to be made in real life?
Yeah, I mean, with 3D art and animation, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that you can like you
Right.
fake stuff to make it look, because all that matters is the final image that's on the screen. No matter how you get
Yep.
it doesn't matter. But
Yep.
with hardware, you have to think through like all of these different factors because it's going to be made a physical thing. People will be using it in ways that maybe you didn't even expect them to use it. So
Right.
I think a lot of the process that I used was just like share stuff out, do the best I could using my own opinions and taste, and see what people think. Ask a close group of friends and designers that are also, keyboard enthusiasts. What am I missing here? And it's helped me kind of refine the design. So like originally, based on my research, like I had made the keycaps way too big, and
Okay.
like the physical size of them was much bigger. And like you do research on like what the dimensions of a keycap need to be, and there's
Mhm.
very specific size things. So like for example, a standard keycap is 1.805 centimeters by
Yeah.
1.805 centimeters, and they need to be spaced a certain amount up between them. So it's very like you have to get all of those details right, from like this millimeter scale, even sub millimeter scale, in some places, and then thinking through like what kind of. And there's so many decisions you can make like along the way, because there's no set like rules for like how you put together a keyboard layout, as you will if you look like in the keyboard scene. There's
Right.
tons and tons of variation, which I think is kind of like a beautiful thing because everyone has got different kinds of desire when it comes to keyboards. So there's room for a lot of different players. So like a lot of people like full size mechanical keyboards, which have much more travel. They're louder, just a
Mhm.
bigger, enclosure, things like that. Other people like the Magic keyboard from Apple because it feels very much like a MacBook keyboard. I personally like low profile keyboards. That's why I designed the knob to be a low profile keyboard, because I wanted it to look that way. I don't like the bigger keys because it's too
Mhm.
big for me, and like the chiclet keys that you find like on a MacBook are a little bit too like simple. So I wanted something that felt like a little bit more substantial. So
Yeah.
it's a balancing act, and there's not like the aesthetic that I aimed for. I saw like there's no one really quite making a keyboard like this. Why not design it like that, and then push myself to like make it as good as I can. Uh, and I'm sure if I were to design another keyboard, I would make different choices and things like that because I have more
Right.
experience. But the where it's at now, I'm really happy with it. I'm excited to see, the Mattia working on like the industrial design and like Rhino, which is a CAD program,
Yeah.
and like working with manufacturing and things like that. So it's really satisfying to like think about all of the choices I made early on were really like solid, and it wasn't
Mhm.
like I was way far out from like what could be possible, because you look at a lot of concept keyboards and they're like magic. Like
They're
there's
crazy.
no
Yeah.
way that you could actually build this thing. Like I saw one on Behance and it was like an AI driven keyboard, and it had like a little screen that like goes over the top of the keyboard with letters kind of like ghosted into this glass. And I'm like, how would you even do that? Like, I don't know. So like I was thinking about it in practical sense. Like if I
Right.
wanted to make this actually a thing, let's design it with that in mind. And it kind of worked out.
Hang on. I know you're enjoying the show, but we have a design emergency. My new client on Contra needs wireframes and he needs them fast. There's only one way I'm going to make that happen today, and that's with Reloom. Reloom makes it incredibly easy to wireframe and plan website content in seconds. Try it yourself. Hit the link in the video description, or if you're on Twitter, in the thread below to try Reloom for free.
Obviously, you kind of hinted at that. There's so many different types of keyboards out there, and they can all be for different people, and everyone has their own preferences. What type of person do you think is your keyboard like targeting? For example, like the creator board, obviously going after creators and designers like me, which is why I was attracted to it. So what do you think is that target audience?
I think it's pretty broad. I mean, it's not for everyone. I realize that. And a lot of people want a numpad on their keyboard, and
right.
I don't use one, so I didn't design it with one. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be for everybody. But I think the core target audience, I guess, was first of all me, because I wanted to design it for me.
I love that you said that.
And then, like, afterwards, if other people liked it, great. But it seemed like I'm a designer, I'm an artist, I love technology, and I think people who have that kind of same mentality of loving like beautiful piece of technology to have in their office, or carry in their bag to their office, or work on the train or whatever. I think this keyboard will be great for all those people. And it's not like it's made specifically for like an artist or something like that, because it's too niche, I think. But it's made for people because it's not an inexpensive keyboard. So I think people need to they're going to want to invest in something beautiful, and that's kind of like what I was targeting.
Makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the price. It leads right into my next question. Obviously, I think people are always very natural to complain about anything that has a quote unquote higher price, right? I've seen some people on Twitter kind of complain about that. What is your kind of thoughts on that feedback, and how do you respond to people that complain about the price?
Yeah, I knew when we decided on what the price point would be, I knew people would not everyone would be like, oh, okay. There would be quite a bit of pushback, and I wasn't expecting it to be as vocal as it ended up being. Like, I think the Twitter and Instagram posts that announced the price, like, so many people were like, it's too high. And it was kind of like hard to hear, I guess. I remember feeling like a little bit depressed after hearing that, because I've been working on this thing for so long, and here's people like, dunking on it. And it's interesting in the technology world, it seems to be the popular thing. You announce something new and people just get to hate on it.
For sure.
Like with the humane AI pen, it's
man.
a huge, huge risk to build something that's different. And they did it. And maybe it's not perfect. There's room for improvement, but that's like with anything. Like, you launch something just to get it out and get feedback. And I'm wishing for them to succeed, because it's awesome to have new piece of technology out there. But I kind of didn't expect the response to be so negative, specifically about the price. Right. And I did like a little rebuttal thing on Twitter and LinkedIn and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's the Work Louder is a small organization, and we're not going to be making tens of thousands of these keyboards, hundreds of thousands, millions. It's not even it's not going to be close to that. So like the price can't be at the Logitech price. It can't be at the Keychron or Newfie price, because we're not making a huge batch where it drives the cost down. So like it has to make sense for us, so that we're, taking care of our families in our situation. But at the end of the day, also not compromising on the vision that we have for the keyboard. So we don't want to scope down a feature set or like a material build or any of the kind of things that we design the keyboard with in mind to meet a price point that will sell millions. I mean, like, that would be great if it sold that much, and maybe somewhere down the road we would design something like that would be more mass market price point. But for this keyboard, we focus on making it as premium as we could, and we'll see what the future brings.
Right. I think that's completely fair. I think a lot of people are just very quick to judge new products solely on price. I mean, I think my argument to that, to a lot of people that complain about just new things being expensive, is, well, if you think it's expensive, it probably wasn't for you anyways. And so
I don't want to like, sorry to interrupt. Like,
no, yeah,
I don't want to like say like anything about anybody's financial situation. Like, I don't,
right.
like I understand, like you want to have this thing, you like the way it looks, and it costs too much. I'm like, there's nothing I can do to alleviate that.
Exactly.
Like there's the keyboard is the way it is, and we designed it in a way that means that we have to sell it at a premium price point.
Right.
It's just
and it's exactly. That's the perfect way to put it. I think a lot of people, they just don't realize like the thinking, strategy, and the decision making going behind any product being created, especially something coming into a new physical product like this, like you said, from a smaller company. So there's just so many decisions that have to be made there. Then obviously your decisions were make it as premium as possible, and then obviously that's going to create a premium price point. So I think just people are just always quick to assume, and they don't look at what goes behind it and everything, and all the hundreds of hours, I'm sure, of work going into creating it. So I think it's
and it's not even close to the most expensive keyboard out there. If you look
that's
at
a great
the high
point.
end like keyboard space, there's some that cost double or even triple of what we're shipping the knob with. So
Right. I think maybe some of that is when we post about these things on like Twitter, for example, maybe the audience seeing it doesn't even realize that there is keyboards that are that expensive, because maybe they're just not into keyboards, right? And they just see a cool keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, being designers or creatives, they're aesthetically drawn to it, but they don't necessarily know that market at all. So I mean, I'm sure that's a big part of the problem too. So I mean, it just makes sense. So I think a lot of people are willing to pay a premium for a premium product. I'm definitely one of those people. I'm definitely going to be getting the keyboard. I buy all the work ladder keyboards, and none of them are cheap. And so we already know this is the case, right? So it's most often the loudest critics were never going to be the customers, no matter what. Is kind of what I've seen. So I mean, you got to take it with a grain of salt, right? And so I think you've approached it very professionally online, and I mean, what else can you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a honest guy when it comes to my social media. I don't like to put on a pretense or a show and act some way that would be contrary to my nature. So
Right.
like I try to, joke around, share some memes, be like,
yeah,
sorry, like what, I don't want to have to defend myself at every turn. If you don't
Exactly.
see the value, then the keyboard's not for you. And then I can just focus on building what I'm excited to build, making it as good as I can, sharing the progress with the community. Like I want people to see like it is possible to build your own piece of technology if you're willing to put in the work.
Last interruption, I promise. So you know that new client I just got on Contra? Well, I finished up their wireframes in Reloom, and now I've realized they need some custom web development. The thing is, I'm not a developer, I'm a designer. So what am I going to do? Call in reinforcements from Alkali. Alkali is a development agency that works with designers and teams across the globe through white label and referral partnerships. Their referral program offers a 10% uncapped commission on all development work you refer their way. If you're looking for a reliable team of development experts, look no further than Alkali.
I mean, you definitely proven that in less than a year, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
A huge accomplishment for sure. So, I mean, kind of hinting on that. So, audience building. So, obviously, you've kind of said that the keyboard gained a lot of traction just from sharing it on social media and whatnot. Can you walk me through maybe back in the beginning phases of this when you first started sharing it, kind of how that went? Did you already have an audience before that? Did the audience start growing because of the new content? How did the audience building kind of go?
Yeah, so I've been cultivating my Twitter and Instagram following quite a bit prior to the keyboard. It's grown a lot since I started making the keyboard, because I think it's reaching a broader audience than my artwork did. But the process was very much like I would have an idea, I would put together a render, and I would post it. Sometimes it's animated, sometimes it's not. And I would have some quippy tagline on there, because I think Knob is a somewhat silly name, because I wanted it to not be super serious.
Right.
And I kind of like was like leaning into that just a bit, like a little bit of like humor with the copywriting, and some of like the graphic design and things like that. So like I wanted it to feel fun. And it just kind of like, from the very first time I posted I think the first time I posted the full version of the keyboard, it was a Figma mockup. So like I did an auto layout thing for the key set, and then vectors for like all of like the keyboard enclosure and things like that from a top down view. So very much like if you were to look at like the render that's at the bottom of knob.design, very much like that camera angle, but in Figma. And people were like, is this real? Where's the buy link? Like, and that was like before I even started modeling it 3D. So I knew there was something to it. And I knew that if I was willing to work hard to get it to make it more real, then the excitement that I would see like on social would just go up and up and up. And it's done that. Like I haven't done like a full tabulation, but just from like the pre-order, like the pre-order window, like the price announcement to like now, I think across channels I have over 10 million views for like the posts that I made, on like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. TikToks did surprisingly well. I don't have that big of a following on TikTok. Prior to the keyboard pre-order announcement, I had just shy of 1,000 followers on TikTok, and now I have like 5,000. And the video got 2 million views just on TikTok.
That's crazy.
And it must have went viral, kind of.
Right.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just been kind of posting things organically, not being super scripted about it. Like, oh, I have to post every day or every other day. I've never been like that when it comes to my social media, and it's just kind of had success, which I can't complain about.
Organic growth. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's the proper way to do it. And a lot of people are just trying to find the shortcut to building the audience and whatnot. But I think at the end of the day, nothing works better than just being yourself. And you can't hack your way around that. So,
and like I had posted like work before, like I post, if you go like on my Instagram, like and scroll back, I think it's probably the best way to see like the history of like how my work has evolved. I went from like a cartoony, like 3D style to like a more like refined style. And like I started getting like sound design integrated into my pieces. And it just kind of like leveled up since then. So I've been really fortunate to have a good audience there.
That's awesome. I think there's something to be said with that. And a lot of people will delete their old posts and whatnot because they feel embarrassed by it or whatever because of how they've changed, right? I think it's awesome to go back and look through that time machine exactly and see how a designer has evolved. And I think it's super powerful. So that's awesome. So going back to the keyboard a little bit more, I have a couple more questions. So what are your favorite ideas so far anyways for the little touchscreen on the keyboard?
It's actually not a touchscreen.
It's not
a lot of people think it's a touchscreen, but we had to find a component for the keyboard screen that was the form factor that would fit in that space above the right arrow key. And the one we found is not a touchscreen. It's 100 by 310 like TFT LCD, whatever. It's full color. TBD on the refresh rate and all that stuff. So we'll see how that goes.
Nice.
But the stuff that we're shipping with it is custom wallpapers, so people can upload like their own artwork or whatever designs and use that as a wallpaper for the screen. GIF support, hopefully, as well, so they can have like a little animation playing there. I think that'd be cool for motion designers to have like a nice like screen on the keyboard that they can customize. Reminds me a bit of the Winamp skins of olden days, and where you could like really make like the Winamp thing your own by downloading other people's skins, making your own. Like I kind of want the keyboard screen to be like that, where it's very customizable. And then there's like a timer function that we're going to be building in, and maybe like a stopwatch We'll see about like a weather widget,
That'd
things
be
like
nice.
that. It'll all just depend on how much time we have to develop it prior
Right.
to like shipping in Q3. And then after that, we want to make it possible for people to create their own widgets and features on the screen. And again, like I don't have really any details to share about that because we're still working through all the tech that's going to drive everything.
Right.
But it should be pretty customizable if you're savvy enough. It's not going to be like a build it in Figma and hit a button and it's on your
Right.
keyboard, but it's like you're going to need to have some development skill to be able to code your own stuff. But who knows? Like if there's enough people that create stuff, maybe there'll be a marketplace where you can like download an app that you want for your keyboard, which is kind of wild. I was thinking the other day, like it's kind of crazy that I'm designing a keyboard and it's getting made, but it's also like designing a little operating system for it too.
It really is, yeah.
And you have to think like, how am I going to use this? Maybe we'll be able to do a touchscreen in the future, but now it's not. So like the way you interact with the screen is with the bottom knob and the right function key. So like you use like the FN key and the bottom knob to change the feature you're on. And then when you let go of the function key and just turn the bottom knob, it like increments or decrements like a scroll, like highlight.
Right.
And then to make a selection, you hit the FN key twice.
Okay. Nice.
And then you can it'll like go around in a carousel. So you can move things around that way. So it's very much like I wanted it to be intuitive and not like super clunky to have to hit like a bunch of keys and stuff like that. I didn't want to add like additional buttons to the keyboard because it would kind of like break the aesthetic. One of the ideas that we had originally, or while we were working through some of like these details, was adding a button on like the side of the keyboard that could work as like a way to select something on the screen. Yeah. And my concern with that was if you make it like too hard to press, when you press it, the whole keyboard moves like on your desk. And I felt like that's probably not the best way to do it. And I'm pretty happy with the way the UX is going to work. It'll be fun to see it like in prototypes in the coming months.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, obviously it's going to ship with its own software then. So from like how programmable is the rest of the keyboard beyond the screen?
So it's going to run off of Work Louder's like desktop app. And I don't think you'll need it installed to run the keyboard. It'll run off its own firmware, no problem. But if you want to like remap stuff, you'll need to download the Work Louder software. I know some people have been asking about if it would be compatible with QMK or VIA. And we investigated that initially, but the CPU chip that we're using that's built into the keyboard isn't supported by QMK or VIA without a bunch of development effort. And it just didn't make sense for us to support this. It's popular in the mechanical keyboard space, but I would say it's rather niche when it comes to the general user. I remember before I even started doing this, I was like, what is QMK VIA?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, to be honest, I didn't even learn about it until I bought the creator board.
Yeah.
Because before, I mean, the thing with me, I was one of those people that always used like the Apple Magic keyboards, and I just couldn't get into mechanical keyboards for whatever reason. But when I saw the creator board, it was so different and so aesthetically pleasing to me that I just had to try it. And I've gotten very used to it, and it is very different. But now that I'm used to it and got it all custom programmed and everything, I'm like a crazy power user with all my little knobs and everything over here.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but like I said, I'm really looking forward to trying out your board here in the coming months. So that's going to be awesome.
Definitely.
So last question about the keyboard specifically. So the red coats across the ocean, as I like to call them,
Here it comes.
Dude, they don't like the name knob for their own reasons. And I introduced them by saying red coats for a reason. How did you take that response?
So I consulted with a few Brits while workshopping the name, and they were fine. They were fine with it. They thought it was funny and like okay, yeah, whatever. And then just kind of moved on. It's got knobs on it, man. Like, why are you upset? What do you call
Right.
a doorknob?
That's a great point. That's a great point. I like
And maybe
that.
they have a different name for it. I don't know, honestly. But
Right.
I think it's its own thing. Like I don't want it to mean that.
Right.
Like I don't want it to have a derogatory connotation. I want it to be like it's singular knob. It's not knobs. It's not a knob. It's just knob.
Mm-hmm.
And I like it.
Yeah, I think it's a great name, and I was immediately attracted to the name when I saw it. So I think your whole strategy with it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess one more question about the keyboards. So I think you said in a tweet once that this is just the beginning of the knob universe. Is there any ideas or products in your mind that you would be able to share with us for the future?
I think if you look at the knob series, and I've been like slowly posting case studies on my Behance page, you'll see the DNA for the knob keyboard in those different concepts, and there's 12 in total.
Oh wow!
And I would say that if you look at those, you'll see hints of what could be. I know one thing that people have been asking for is a numpad, like a 10 key numpad. And I posted like a quick sketch of like what that might look like. And I took like the knob, like geometry in plasticity, which is the 3 CAD program. And I like shrunk down the width and then like put keys in there to make it look like it's a 10 key. And I put some knobs along the top. I don't think that's not the final layout or anything like that,
Right.
but I think that could be one potential device that we make
That makes a lot of sense.
in the future. The nice thing about it is if we build it with the same materials and with the same keycap style, then the upfront setup, manufacturing, blah blah blah, would be much less than if we were to having to do all of that again.
Right.
So I think that I'd like to leverage some of the costs that we're doing upfront for like the molds and getting all of that stuff done, so that any additional devices in the knob like ecosystem will be lower lifts than something it's kind of like you're building an app and you have a bunch of components and you don't want to create any new components. Can we repurpose them? Can we reorder them? Can we move them to different places and it's make something new? I'm thinking about things like that.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, looking forward to seeing what comes out in the next few years. So, I mean, besides making the most beautiful keyboard in the world, what kind of other projects are you working on day to day right now?
So I work full-time at Wealthsimple, which is a Canadian fintech company. And I've been there for almost a year and a half now. I work as a staff designer in 3D motion with them. I work on the brand and marketing side. So if you go to like wealthsimple.com and there's 3D stuff there, I probably worked on it.
Nice.
And that's been a really, really great job to have, because it's like they push us to be as good as we can be. And it's been a great place to work for the past year and a half. But I also do like a little bit of freelance here and there. Not so much lately. It's a little bit too taxing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But yeah, I mean, I try to make my own personal work when I can. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Beautiful. I mean, from what I've seen, I think, did you used to do full-time freelance at any point?
I did for 1 year.
Oh, okay.
And it was, how long ago was that? Let's see. It was like 2017, 2018. I think I did a year of freelance, and it was like, maybe it was longer ago than that, because I remember it only worked out because Dribble was booming at the time, and I was just getting tons of leads through Dribble. And I did it for a year, and I kind of like just burnt out because it felt like I was always working always trying to get more billable hours. We went on a vacation, me and my wife, and I was working on the vacation because like a client had a deadline and I didn't want to miss the deadline. And so I realized that was a little bit toxic for my personal life.
For sure.
And so I've been, working full time for companies since then. And it's been good. It helps me have a good balance. It lets me create my own stuff on the side that I'm not like having to, answer to a client on. And I think as an artist and designer, having personal work helps your professional work a lot.
Absolutely,
and, yeah. In those contexts, like I don't like thinking about it as work because it's more like just a creative expression. Like you have an idea, you want to make it. Like what does it mean to make it? What are you going to do? Like how far can you push yourself? Can you art direct yourself a little bit? Can you be like learn a new skill because this idea you have would require it? It's kind of why I started doing 3D. I haven't done 3D like my entire career. I was a product designer and graphic designer for the majority of my career. And it wasn't until early COVID days that I was like, I'm going to learn 3D. And I burned hard, like midnight. I was up late, like a lot, but I was like into it. I was learning Blender and Cinema 4D and Maya and Redshift and Octave, like all of these like render engines. And then After Effects, I realized I needed to be more familiar with that. So it was just like this passion, like kind of like consume me, and I was able to pivot from being
that's awesome,
like that product designer person to now 3D and motion person, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's a massive shift, right? I think there's a big thing to be said there, though. It basically started from you experimenting and wanting to learn something, right? And turned into being your career and leading to creating a keyboard, which is pretty awesome. So, I mean, you've been a motion designer, you've been a creative director, freelance designer. You have extensive experience throughout the entire design industry. So, what have been maybe some of your favorite design jobs or even freelance projects?
Oh man, I really liked working. There's this small freelance job I did a couple years ago now for Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
Nice.
I had a friend reach out and they wanted me to help, and it was for a video that they have at their factory. And it plays like it's like I worked on a few 3D things for like what they'll see at the Ben and Jerry's factory. And like I modeled a cow, like the Ben and Jerry's cow, and like I rigged it up, and I made like they have a thing called a flavor graveyard. And it's where like all the flavors go to retire. Like they bury them in like these little Ben and Jerry's coffins.
Oh my God.
And like I had to model a Ben and Jerry's coffin with like the flavor like emblem like on the front.
Right.
And it was supposed to be like all spooky, kind of like, trees all scraggly and like cloudy skies. And that was a fun kind of like thing to work on because I had to use Unreal Engine like Quixel assets. So Unreal Engine has like this asset library called Megascans, and it's all like these super high res, like organic stuff. Like you can have rocks or trees or little doodads, and you can just decorate your scene and it looks fantastic. So I was able to use that, and it was just fun working on the Ben and Jerry's brand. They have a really
that's awesome,
fun canvas to
I think that's
work
definitely
with.
a very unique project to have worked on, and I didn't know that they had a flavor graveyard. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's at their headquarters.
That's awesome. So I mean, last thing I want to go over here with you. So for designers maybe who are still working their way up the ladder, whether it's the corporate ladder or getting going as freelancers, since you have experience with both, what do you think in today's day and age is the most important skills they should be focusing on learning?
I think first of all, a creative person needs to be curious and willing to ask questions and find solutions. Being a creative person means that you have to think creatively. It's not just about doing something in Figma or in Photoshop or in After Effects or in Cinema 4D. Like those are all tools that help you achieve your creative vision.
Right.
So like you have to be willing to use whatever tool you can to get your vision out there. And that means having taste. I see a lot of like junior kind of work when I'm like browsing through Instagram, or someone will DM me being like, hey, take a look at your profile. And you could tell like some of them haven't developed their taste quite yet. So that they're not like developing really strong opinions about how something should look. And part of that is like being able to be critical of your own work and think like, how do I make this better? How do I take it to the next level? Because when you can step back and look at your own work objectively like that and be like, okay, I got to throw this out, or I got to move this thing over there. And like, I have to make all these changes. Like you end up like creating better work. And sometimes I think that the trap that a lot of designers might fall into, at least at a junior level, is that you have to get it done as quick as possible and move on to the next thing. And the older I've gotten, the more I realize that the more work you put into something, the better it will be. So like just getting something done is not enough. Like you have to put something else into it. There has to be some magic that you're bringing to this thing.
Thank you for watching the first episode of Design Louder. That was a great conversation I had with Ben, and I love the way he beautifully ended the show there. Design Louder is made possible thanks to companies like Framer. No-code web development has never been more accessible. In fact, the Design Louder website was built in Framer in just a couple of hours. Just look how easy it is to add custom animations and custom layouts to your site, all in Framer with no code. You can even test on the fly.